Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for having me. It's an absolute honor to be here today. My name is Elisa Bandini, and I'm going to be telling you about our project with Dr. Sofia Forss at the University of Zurich called Ape Research Index, quantifying the effect of previous experience on cognitive skills in chimpanzees. Now, one question that unites researchers across fields is understanding what makes us humans unique, and with that, what are the roots of our culture and cognition? To start to address these big questions, our closest living relatives, chimpanzees, are the primary models for comparative studies. In fact, if you type into Google Scholar the keywords chimpanzee model humans, you'll get over 27 million results in less than half a second, demonstrating just how important chimpanzees are. Chimpanzees are used as models across a huge range of studies, ranging from cognitive, anatomical to behavioral questions, across a vast majority of research fields. In particular, research with captive chimpanzees is used to generate insights on the big questions of human and non-human primate culture and cognition. However, what these studies often fail to acknowledge is the complexity of factors that affect chimpanzee performance in research. For example, one factor that is often accounted for is the role of the environment. Another crucial factor, namely the role of previous experience in chimpanzee performance, is often neglected. This is despite the fact that in the field of human psychology, for example, how our previous experience shapes our current behavior and cognition is very often mentioned and well studied. In fact, Sofia and I have seen this happen firsthand with our daughters as they grow and learn new skills based on the ones that they were exposed to previously. As humans and chimpanzees are so closely related, it's very likely that previous experience also plays an important role in chimpanzee cognition and behavior. This interaction between experience and environment then most likely leads to individual differences in performance, differences that are very often mentioned in the literature but treated more as noise rather than taken seriously. This noisy data is then generalized on a species-wide level and used to generate some of the most important hypotheses on human evolutionary questions. So why is this a big problem? Well, I'm sure you're all familiar with the big bias in the field of human psychology, namely that a vast amount of studies are being carried out with adults from Western-educated, industrialized, rich, and democratic societies, yielding the acronym we are all familiar with, WEIRD. So this finding has led many to start to question the validity and universality of some of the core findings in human psychology, and has led to a flurry of papers looking into this bias and how to move forward as a field. Now, whilst you may be familiar with this bias in the field of human psychology, what you might not know is that the exact same bias exists in captive chimpanzee work. In fact, the majority of studies with captive chimpanzees are carried out at just a handful of research centers around the world. These research centers have been open for decades and house chimpanzees that have been living there sometimes for their entire lifetimes. For example, the Yerkes Center in the US has been doing research for 57 years, Ngamba Island in Uganda has been doing research for 24 years, and the Wolfgang Köhler Center in Leipzig has been doing research for over 27 years. The chimpanzees living at these sites are tested on an almost daily basis, building up a huge amount of research experience over their lifetimes. Despite this, and despite the fact that the majority of publications with captive chimpanzees come from chimpanzees living at these research centers, currently there is no acknowledgement of the effect of this huge body of research on the subjects and their performance and tasks. In fact, findings from these captive chimpanzees are generally generalized on a species-wide level and then used to create the hypotheses that we're all looking at human evolutionary questions. Now, Sofia and I have been interested in this phenomenon for quite a while, and to start to look into it, we decided to run some pilot studies to see whether we could measure the effect of previous experience on chimpanzees and if it had an effect. To do so, we decided to run some pilot studies where we tested two groups of chimpanzees. The first ones were living at Leintal Zoo, and these chimpanzees were completely naive to research tasks before our study, and we compared them to chimpanzees living at Ngamba Island, one of the research-intensive facilities I mentioned. We gave chimpanzees 6 tasks ranging across cognitive domains, the exact same task given across both groups. And what we found was in 4 out of 6 of the tasks, there was a significant difference in performance. And you may not be surprised to hear that the Ngamba chimpanzees performed significantly better than their Leintal counterparts. So what these pilot studies showed us is that, first of all, there is a tangible effect of previous experience on chimpanzee cognition, and this effect can be measured. However, what it also showed us is that if we are to truly understand the implications of this bias, we need to run much larger scale studies across many more research institutions with more chimpanzees and tasks across cognitive domains. Therefore, the elephant in the room remains. Namely, that hypotheses on major human evolutionary questions are being drawn from a skewed biased sample of intensively studied chimpanzees that are not representative of the species as a whole. This has led to a huge lack of robust, valid data across fields. So basically, everything is terrible, and that's the end of my talk. I'm just kidding. Luckily, we have a solution to this problem, which comes in the form of our project, the Ape Research Index, or ARI. This project is going to be the first one to offer a way to measure the effect of previous experience, assess the impact of intensive research on animal cognition, and the repercussions for comparative cognition studies. To do so, we've divided the project into two parts. The first one, Objective 1, involves a meta-analysis of the existing literature. This will give us a quantification of the existing literature and will help us identify any patterns in individual chimpanzee performance in the past. The second objective will complement the first by providing targeted testing. This will give us empirical evidence of current chimpanzee performance based on previous experience in tasks across cognitive domains, testing chimpanzees that are alive today and being tested on a daily basis. So in a bit more detail, the first objective, as I said, will be a literature review. And the hypothesis driving this is that the more research experience a chimpanzee has, the better performance they will have across their lifetime. To test this hypothesis, we will identify research centers with the highest level of experience and the lowest level from the publications. Once we have done that, we're going to track each individual chimpanzee's participation in tasks and their performance across the lifetime as their experience grows. We will put all this information into an open database that will be available to all researchers, but I'll tell you a bit more about that in a second. The second objective will be targeted testing according to experience. To do this, we're going to test chimpanzees with the highest level of research experience and compare them to chimpanzees with the lowest level of research experience. We'll identify these individuals or these groups from the database we created in Objective 1. Once we've identified the groups, we are going to create a test battery that has tasks across cognitive domains, and we will provide the exact same test battery across both groups. One task we may include is this chimpanzee. As you can see, is a tool use task, and there's a chimpanzee that's using some innovative methods, let's say, to get some honey out of the tube. Now, I've muted the video because I imagine you all came here with your intact eardrums and wish to leave with them. But as you can see, he's using quite different methods to try to get the honey out. This is just one example of the type of task we may include in the test battery. This part of the project will give us completely novel, targeted data on the effect of previous experience on current cognition. And again, all data will be made open access and placed in this database. So what are the outcomes and implications of this project? If we do find that previous experience has an effect on animal cognition, we would have to completely reverse the current approach in the field, which simplifies findings from a subset of intensively tested individuals and generalizes them on a species-wide level. Furthermore, we'll have to reevaluate conclusions drawn from past studies to see whether they still stand based on our findings. Our project will also contribute a powerful way to measure experience effect across individuals, but also across species. Just like this bias exists in chimpanzee research, it's very likely to be a big problem in other fields of animal behavior and will need to be quantified and measured using our methodology. Furthermore, as I mentioned, we'll create an open access database where we put all the data we collected in Objective 1 and Objective 2 into it and make it freely available to all researchers. Now, this tool, I think, will really revolutionize the field of captive chimpanzee work, as it will allow researchers to check the level of previous experience of the chimpanzees they wish to test before running their studies. This will allow them to check whether the chimpanzees they want to test are applicable for their research question, and if not, find a group that is. This will really increase the validity and universality of comparative studies and ensure that new studies that are being run are generating robust hypotheses on human evolution that will stand the test of time. And with that, I thank you very much, and I look forward to your questions.